Alright, welcome back. So today we'll be talking about functions. So let's go ahead and create a new class. And we'll call it test. And we'll add our main method. Okay? Just clear this. Alright, so let's talk about the main method first. So main method, or function, has a name of main, right? And it's specifically a method that, with this method signature, the method signature is what is defined right here. This method signature is unique in such a way that Java knows to run this main method. It cannot run anything else to start the program, so it needs a main method to run. So, for example, if I called it main2, it doesn't allow me to run anything because you can see the green arrow, like run button, run away, right? So if I make it back to main, now I can see that green button, I can run main. I can actually do something called method override and override main. So if I copy this, okay, and I just add a parameter here, second parameter. Now I can't run this because it has to be the exact same method signature as this to be able to run it. And you can only have one main per class. You can have as many mains as you want, as in, like, if you have like 10 classes, you can have 10 mains, but you cannot have more than one main method that is able to run the green button. You can only have one per class of such ability. So it's the only one that can actually run. Now, we can have multiple mains, like I said, so public void main, and we can pass in another parameter, int a, int b, right? And this allows us to have multiple methods of the same name. So this is called method overloading. Okay, so you can have the same method name multiple times in the same class. This is class test, and we have 3 main methods, right? But only one legitimate main method that can actually run, okay? So the main method has to have this signature, okay? The signature is this, or in this case, this. Okay, the signature is the method declaration. So the main is also public, which means that other classes can access it. We'll talk more about access modifiers later. And then it's also static, and we'll talk about static again shortly, and void. And void means it doesn't return anything. So you can't do return like 5, for example. You can't return anything in the main, right? It says cannot return a value from a method with void return result type. So you can't return anything. So let's actually create a method that can return something. So let's do, let's call it add 2 numbers, right? And we get a couple errors. The first error we get is a return type is required. So let's go ahead and add a return type. So if we add 2 numbers, let's add 2 integers. So int, add 2 numbers. Now the second error is missing return statement. So we need a return statement. So let's return 10 plus 5. Okay. And let's go ahead and run that in the main. But it's going to fail because it's expecting any method call or invocation inside the main method to also be static. So any static method, not just main, that has a method call inside of it, requires that method to be static. So int add 2 numbers, method signature requires a static, right? So we have to add static, and now it doesn't complain. We can go ahead and print this. And let's see what we get. The bottom here. It's taking a while. Alright, we get 15, which makes sense because we added 2 numbers, 10 plus 5, right? But we hard-coded these numbers. Okay, so let's go ahead and not hard-code them. So let's just maybe add some variables. So num1 equals 10, int num2 equals 5, and int total equals num1 plus num2, okay? And instead of returning 10 plus 5, we return a total. So now if we run this again, we should also get 15. But now we're not actually hard coding what we return. We're actually saving a variable to return. We're returning the variable total, which equals num1 plus num2, and num1 equals 10, and num2 equals 5. So really we're returning 10 plus 5 as total. Okay? But this is still hard coding it. It's not dynamic yet, right? So we want to pass in values so that we can pass in anything and add any two numbers, right? So let's pass in num1 and num2 over here, get rid of this, and now this is complaining because it's expecting the same amount of arguments as parameters. So there's two parameters, right, and two arguments here. So if you pass in true and true, it's going to complain because it's expecting two integers and it found two booleans. So it has to be the same type. So the arguments have to be integers of type int. So let's say, for example, 5 and 10. That's valid, doesn't complain anymore. We can go ahead and run this. And we should get 15 after this is done running. Okay, perfect, 15. All right, so next, let's talk about, first we can remove this. We don't need this. We can just return num1 and num2. I was showing you that all you're doing is adding two numbers. So you can just return the value you pass in for num1 and the value you pass in for num2 and add them together. So you do return num1 plus num2, and you would get 15. So the return type is int here, right? Can it be, for example, double? Actually, it can, and does it still return 15? Let's see. Returns 15.0 because it doubles a decimal, right? So it can't return something without a decimal point. So it has to return. It can take in two integers and convert it to a double, and it returns 15.0. So that is a valid method signature return type. But if you do something like car, it says expecting int found int and required car. So basically it's requiring you to return a car here. So like, for example, A, and now it's valid, but you actually want to return int here, right? You want to return the value of two numbers added. So you want to make sure this is int. It can't be Boolean. It can be a car. It has to be an int or a double. Well, preferably a int because you want to return something without decimal point. So this is how we define a method signature return type. And now let's talk about access modifiers such as public, private, and package protected. Alright, so first we're going to create some packages. So source, click on source, click new, click package. Let's create package 1. And let's create another package called package 2. And let's move this function, okay, and let's close this class. Let's move this function into a class inside package 1. We'll call it A, and we'll move this here. And let's create a class B in package 2. So then if you open package 1, you should get a class with a header called package 1. And if you open class B, we'll open it on the right. You should get package 2. So what I'm trying to show you here is that this is the default. So if you don't specify public or private, then the default is package protected, which means that you can only access the static method or function in the same package. So B is not the same package, therefore it will not work. So if you try to access it, if you do system.out a dot something, it doesn't pop up. The function doesn't pop up, so we're not actually allowed to use it because it's package protected, and A and B are different packages. A is in package 1, and B is in package 2. So B cannot access this method because it's a different package. So let's talk about another different example. So let's add another class. We'll call it C, and this one is actually in the same package, right? So this one will actually work. Okay, so if we do public static void main, and we print out the value of a dot add two numbers. See, it allows us to actually add two numbers. And let's just comment this out real quick. Make this smaller. Okay, and let's run this. And we should get 15. But as you can see, we can access. Yeah, we got 15. You can see we can access this method a dot add two numbers inside class C. This is how you statically access a method inside another class in another class. So let's change this up a little bit. Let's make this public. Okay. So now it's public, which means any class can access it. Literally every single class in Java can access this. So as long as they download the library for it, we'll talk about libraries later. But so we do. So ut a dot add two numbers. Now we can actually see that, and let's do 5 and 10, and let's print out b, and we should get 15. So we can see all three classes side by side, right? Let's actually move. Yeah. So b works, and c will still work because now it's, even though a public, like I said, can be accessed anywhere. And now let's make it private. And we'll see what happens now is that there's a red error in C and a red error in B because neither one can access add two numbers from A because, as the error says, add two numbers has private access in package1.a. So, private means exactly what the name is. It means that only class A functions, like another function here, like let's say public, static, void, another function. You can actually access add two numbers, see in here, right? Because it's in the same class. So there's no way to hide methods from other methods in the same class, but you can hide them from other classes. So now class B and C can't see the method add two numbers, but the function, another function in class A can see add two numbers. So that is how access modifiers work. There's another access modifier called protected. We'll talk about that one later, but it has to do with objects and inheritance, which is a topic for later discussion. But for now, you just have to understand that the method signature contains an access modifier, either protected, or public, or private, or package protected. It's a lot at once, I know. And followed by static or not static. It doesn't have to be static. For example, in this case, if you make both of these not static, now it will still work because neither one is static, so you can still access it. But if you make this static, for example, and you try to call a static function, oops. I put the static in the wrong place. My bad. It still works, right? Because it's interesting, right? If you're trying to call static functions inside a non-static function, that works. But if you try to call a non-static function in a static function, right? And let's just make it package protected. It still won't work because you're trying to reference a non-static method inside a static method. So it's a little confusing, but functions that are static require other functions inside of it to also be static, but the vice versa is not true. A non-static function does not require a static function to be static or not static. It doesn't matter. It doesn't care if it's static or not. All right. And then again, we have the return type. So for example, if we wanted to do the beer example again, but instead we want to use, let's just copy paste it real quick somewhere else. So now we want to use Boolean. So let's say 21 and 4, 0, 0. Okay. So let's actually declare some variables here. let's do this. So int legal drinking age is 21, and double money, beer cost equals 4.00. Okay, just like before. And these have to be static, right? Because you're trying to access variables that are not static in a static function. They have to be static. Okay, so one more thing I want to go over is we have camel case declarations for these variables here, but if they're never going to change, for example, legal drinking age will always be 21, at least for now. If it changes very rarely, right, you can make it a constant, as in we should make like public static, or actually private static, really, because no one else should be using this constant except its class. So now we know that legal drinking age is always going to be 21, and let's assume that the beer cost can change, so let's keep it non-static. Let's keep it camel case, okay? So this is a constant, and this is a non-constant. And actually, a constant should also be final, so private, okay, final, oops, I can't spell, static int. So you're using a variable that is final. What that means is it can't change it. So if you try to change it, you say legal drinking age is now 20 instead of 21. It says that cannot assign a value to a final variable, so it's always going to be 21. So anyways, that's kind of off topic, but it's important to know, as we'll keep talking about variable declarations and constants and how to declare them later on. But let's go back to this function. So it's a Boolean type, so either returns true or false. So if instead of printing out something here like you can drink beer or you can't drink beer, you can say it's true or false. So if their age is greater than or equal to 21 and they have more money in their wallet than the cost of the beer, return true, else we return false. And we can go ahead and try that in the main method. Let's go ahead and try that. So can buy beer, 22 and $4, and we have to print it out. So if we just run this, we actually won't get anything because we're not printing out the value of that function. But there's some errors here, so let's go ahead and comment this out for now. And let's just comment this out too, because right now I believe X numbers is private. Yeah. Oh, it's PAX protected. So let's see why this didn't work. Because it's not static. So that's why. So again, if this is static, and it's in the same package, it will now work, okay? But let's not make it static for now. Let's make it non-static and just comment this out for now. So we can run this, because you can't run the Java code unless there's no errors anywhere in all your classes. So if, let's say you have 30 classes and 29 of 30 classes don't have any errors, but one does, it won't let you run. So it'll throw an error and say it cannot compile, because it compiles all the code in every package. So let's go ahead and run this. So we have a Boolean, so it returns true or false. And it should print out either true or false, because we're printing out the value of this function. So we're not actually, sorry, I forgot. So we're at the point where we're saying, yeah, nothing's going to print out because there's no print line statement here. So now if you add a print line statement, then it'll actually print out the value, right? We went over this before in the last couple lectures, but now you actually understand you actually are required to have a print line statement to actually print out values in the console. Okay, so now we print out true because they're all up to buy a beer and they have enough money to buy a beer. Okay, so that's a type Boolean. For example, you have a type int. So you can have any type. You can have any data type or any return type here declared, even like class object or type object, which is a generic object, which I don't recommend for most use cases. But again, we'll talk about objects later, so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. So let's just stick to just primitive data types for now. So yeah, the method signature again can either have static or not have static. It has a return type, has a name, has 0 or more parameters. As we saw, like a function here has no parameters, and that's fine. You can just call another function that has parameters, or just do nothing, or whatever. And it's void, so it doesn't require a return type. So that basically sums up functions in Java. Next lecture, we'll be talking about for loops and what those are.